friends. My name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to an impromptu reorganization of my bookshelf and a little bit of a discussion video, which is why you are so far away from me right now. You are very far away because when I stand up, actually I haven't actually stood up yet, so my head might be cut off, but yep. I am 6'1", and you need to be very far away from me. So let me just keep pushing my table back further. I'm going to be reorganizing my books today because I have no room on my shelves anymore. And so I'm going to officially remove this tiny section of romance and officially make my shelves behind me all fantasy. So that's what we're gonna do. Why? Because I have a number of books that I need to put back on my shelves eventually, as you can kind of see from the stack that's sort of visible. And I have a couple books right there you can see on the chair that I bought yesterday that I need to make space for. So we are going to do a little bit of a fun little reorganization thing, and we're gonna also chat while we do it. Without further ado, let's just get into it. Let's see first and foremost if you can see me standing normally. Ow. Yep, that's gonna happen a lot. I have my, this is my light. I don't know if you can see any of it. I don't think you can, but there's a light here that is above my, yeah, you can barely see me. Okay, good. That is above my head when I'm sitting here at work for my dining room table. There, now you can see it. And I hit my head on it regularly because tall, hi. But yes, okay. So as you can also tell, there's a few books that are kind of sitting out a little bit. First and foremost, clean. Now you may be asking, Jen, what are you going to do with all these romance books? It's a great question. I don't know. I have books living under my bed. I have books living in my yellow case by my piano. We're gonna see what I end up doing with these specifically, but they'll find a spot. Most of these books I have read, so I don't mind putting them kind of underneath my bed and stuff. The ones that I haven't read, I'll keep more out and accessible for me because I'd like to be able to read them or remember that I have them, numero uno. Because that's a thing, remembering that I own the books so that I read them. What I wanted to also discuss is something that has come up very recently, very recently, which is, should we be DNFing books we know are only going to be 3 stars? Now, as a caveat, there is no should or shouldn't do when it comes to reading books. Do whatever the hell you want, read whatever books you want, DNF as you will, but as a person who reads so many books a year and is constantly wanting to find books that I really love, should I be taking the time to read these 3-star books, or should I, as I'm going through it, kind of gauging my reaction by like the 150 page mark and deciding whether it's worth continuing through? What has triggered my contemplation of this mainly is this book right here, which doesn't have its cover on it because it's over there, but it's a beautiful cover. It is Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove by Ratu Mehrotra. I am literally like 60 pages in, and I'm fine with it. That's like the feeling that I have, fine with it, but I'm not sure if I should continue it, even though I know it's probably gonna get like a 3-star by the end of it. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts as we kind of get into this video. I think also I found a review on Goodreads for that book specifically by Samantha, who is on TikTok. I think her handles like Ladybug Books or something. I'll put it on the screen. And I love her reviews and her thoughts for a lot of these things. And she said basically she DNF'd this book specifically because she knew it was going to be 3 stars. And that kind of got my mind thinking, like, why do I continue reading books that I know are just middle of the road for me? Is it an expectation that I set up in myself to do so? Am I just trying to read for quantity? Yes, but also for quality. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is. Should we be DNFing books we may enjoy but aren't overall better than we think they are? That's a weird way to say it. What are we getting out of reading books that end up only being 3 stars? I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna organize this. Give me a second. So here's the thing with 3-star books. I think that it's kind of interesting sometimes when I'm reading a book that isn't necessarily a favorite. I love that you can't see me. when I'm reading a book that isn't necessarily a favorite and I go in, because it's the same kind of feeling that I get when I try and predict 5-star reads. So predicting 5-star reads is so difficult because I don't go into buying books thinking that this is gonna be my new favorite book. When I go into buying books, I buy books that I am either excited for the author, I really enjoy their content, or the idea of the book is really interesting to me, and so that's why I buy the book, which leads to me not necessarily always buying books that'll be my favorite, or they end up, disappointing me in some kind of way because I was really excited for the story. But yes, I don't necessarily go into a book expecting it to be mid for me. So I'm like in the middle. I always buy books that I think I'm going to really enjoy, which is like the main thing that I should be doing, is buying books that I think I'm going to enjoy. But also because I read in book clubs, a lot of the books that I do pick up aren't necessarily books that I would read, and thus I kind of go in with a little bit of a cynical outlook, which is something that I need to work on as a person and as a reader, because if I'm not necessarily interested in the story, I sometimes go in with this bias immediately that I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna like this. But I read it because I have to, because it's for book club, right? Or in some cases, it's something that I've been kind of humming and hawing about reading. Like if it's not part of a book club or just something that I want to read, I go in and I'm like, maybe I'll like this, maybe I won't, I don't really know. And I'll read it and it'll kind of have that like tainted view on it. I don't know. My legs are falling asleep. I cannot crouch like that. I don't know what my point was for that. But when I'm reading a book and I get partway through it and I'm just not feeling it, I will DNF it. But if I'm reading a book and I'm like, I'm kind of enjoying this, I will continue to the end, even if it's not an amazing 4 or 5 star, right? So is that a waste of my time? In some cases, sure, because there's a lot of books that end up being 3 stars because they are incredibly forgettable. Like they were fine, but just not it. Like the story was formulaic, or it was fine and forgettable. And so in that aspect, sure, it's a waste of my time to read things that are forgettable or something that'll just, be with me for when I'm in the pages, but when I close the book, it immediately vanishes from my brain. In that aspect, it's a waste of my time. But, and here's the little caveat for that, I think there are a lot of books that I have read that end up being 3 stars or 3.5 stars or around that range that are still good, and I am glad that I read them, which is so interesting to me because that is also incredibly rare, to be honest. The fact that I read a book that quote unquote low, and yet it's still something that I'm glad I read. I don't know. What do you guys think? It's interesting to me, the idea of DNFing a book that's like fine, something that is not going to be a new favorite, but also something that isn't bad. Would you DNF a book in that instance? Previously, I've only DNF'd a book if it makes me mad or if I'm just straight up just not enjoying it, that kind of instance. But it's an interesting idea whether reading middle of the road books is a waste of time or not. I don't know. It's such an interesting thought. I don't really know what my point is on this, but I wanted to discuss it with you guys. Would you consider the 3-star, the 2.5, 3-star, 3.5 books, like the middle of the road books, a waste of your time? And I guess that also brings into the idea of like what everyone's rating system is, which is another point that I want to talk about, but I'm gonna get back to organizing my books for a second so I can formulate my thoughts. But yeah, I don't know. Is it a waste of my time? While we're in the middle of this, as you can tell, I have turned some books facing out. I do this, 1, because it looks really good, and 2, because it allows me to keep a little bit more room in the middle of my books and stuff, so that if I do get another book by an author with like an S last name, I can kind of shove things around a little easier when there's enough space, It's a design choice and also an organizational choice. Rating system. I'm really intrigued as to what you guys think. So I use half stars because I don't know. Some books fall perfectly in the middle between a 3 and a 4, you know? And so I feel like it's a little bit more of a nuanced situation. And I know some people go as so far to use like quarter stars, which is something that you can do on Storygraph, which I really like, but I use only the half stars. It's such an interesting idea because I came across an author, I cannot remember which author it is, but on Goodreads who's talking about different ratings in their like profile, because I do that as well on my Goodreads profile. I like put my rating graph essentially as to what different ratings mean for me. And she was saying that like a 2-star book for her is good, but like everyone that I know uses a 2-star for books they think were terrible and like not good and not for them. Then what do we use a 1-star for? And I use 1 stars for the books that I think are absolutely abhorrent. I use 1 stars and 1.5 stars for books that are just like so bad that I'm mad that I had to read it and that I didn't DNF it. There are some books like The Daughter of the Moon Goddess that I read out of spite and that got a 1.5 star because of, I don't know, because of the writing or something. But yeah, it's a spiteful kind of rating. But then when I get to my 2 stars, 2 and 2.5 are usually saved for books that just weren't for me and I just really didn't like for various reasons, but aren't necessarily a bad book. They weren't problematic or badly written or anything like that. So what do you guys use for your rating systems? Because that brings us back to the fact that like, what is a 3-star book for you guys? I know like in the grand scheme of rating things, 3 stars, if you make that into a percentage, is 60%, and 60% is not a fail. A 2.5-star book is directly middle of the road, but because a 3-star lands in the middle of the rating system that we use for like up to 5 stars, that becomes our middle of the road rating, right? Rating a book 3 stars feels so middle of the road, and it feels like, to me at least, 3 stars and below are books that I shouldn't have necessarily kept going with, which is why I'm thinking about this DNF thing. If I know going into a book that it's just going to get a 3 or lower, do I continue with it? Unless I have to, in the case of my book club. I just don't know. It's such an interesting idea. It's all because this book, Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove, here, is just not doing it for me. Like, it's fine, and I know that I will enjoy it if I keep going, but there's aspects of it, like the main character drives me nuts because she's a super badass character who's like a bodyguard and whatever, and there's a really interesting magic system that doesn't actually make sense. The more that I think about it, the more it falls apart. Like, there's no rules to it, so it just doesn't have any like concrete substance. Anyways, main character immediately is obsessed with this man who is as interesting as a piece of paper. Like, he's moody and he refuses to talk to her, and she's just like, oh, he's such a terrible person, like, because he's just like so bigoted and whatever, and has all these like thoughts in his head that are very stereotypical and like all this kind of stuff. And yet she's obsessed with him because she just, every scene, it's like a little wrap up of what she thinks or like what he could be thinking. And I'm 60 some odd pages in and I'm already tired of their relationship, and I know it's a slow burn, enemies to lovers kind of a thing. Honestly, talking myself out of reading this book now, and I feel so bad about it because it's just not going to be for me. And I should know that, because I should know that most YAs are not for me. I say that with a caveat though, because some YAs really are. There are some YAs out there that are just so fantastic, but I have to read some middle of the road ones to find the fantastic ones. I don't know. What do you guys think? I discuss in the comments, is it worth reading 3-star books? In some instances, I think yes. Some 3-star books were objectively pretty good. I just didn't have a good time reading them. Or I had a great time reading this book, but objectively it's a terrible book, you know? The spectrum of reading, if you will, is wide and vast, and which is why there are so many of us on this book internet, isn't it? I'm getting a little philosophical now and a little sappy, but anyways, back to my shelves. Instances like this where you've readjusted so much and left spaces some places that you get to the spot that was really the problem and you don't have enough room to do anything with. So back to the beginning we go. Also, I guess I should probably answer a couple questions. General questions about my bookshelf. I organize my bookshelves by genre or category like a bookstore does. That's how I've always done it. Or always. There was a time when I didn't do that. I just shoved them in wherever. Mostly like keeping authors in the same spot, but keeping them in alphabetical order by author is what keeps my brain straight. It's the only way that I can organize my books now without losing the thread of organization on my shelves. From here down, adult sci-fi fantasy, this shelf, YA, sci-fi fantasy, and this is middle grade sci-fi fantasy, if you will. That's what this shelf is. And the rest of my books live in no order whatsoever, just in a disarray in different places that are hidden from eyes. Because I just don't have enough room on this shelf. And I don't have any room anywhere else for another shelf. My book is visible now. I think it'll actually be visible too when I'm sitting on like conference calls and for videos and stuff, because now it's slightly not lined up with where my head is. Cool. All right, so that is the organization of my bookshelf. I think we're good. I think we're good. What do you guys think? There's a little room on the bottom shelf here for some maneuvering. It's loosely packed on the bottom, which is what I need in case a couple books need to be shifted. But I'm not planning on buying any more books for the month of May, so we should be good for at least a month. At least a month, we should be okay. But yes, my friends, I don't really know where this video was gonna go. It was just gonna be me chatting with you and kind of getting my opinion across, but I don't have an opinion, really. I mean, I do in this instance, and I think it's because are 3-star books really worth our time as readers who, you know, 3-star books usually, in the majority, I'm gonna come over here and talk. In the majority, 3-star books are books that are just books, right? In the majority. There are occasionally a 3-star book where it'll be a 3-star book, but I had a great time reading it, kind of a thing. Most of the books that I read land around a 3.5, 4-star. So it's a little bit higher than a 3-star, a little bit higher than a middle of the road book, but it's an interesting dilemma to have, you know, as readers. It brings into question, as I've talked about, like the rating system that we have individually as readers. I use G from Book Roast's Copile rating system. I used her spreadsheet, and that's how I get my ratings out of it. But most of the time, I know going into filling out that spreadsheet what number I want to get from it. This is definitely a 3-star book, and if I put in the numbers and I get a 4-star, I adjust the numbers down to make it a 3-star, because I know, like, arguably to me it was a 3-star, but that's so opinionated. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think? This is definitely an ongoing kind of a thought process. Will I DNF Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove? Probably. I'm gonna give it to page 100, and if I'm intrigued by it, I'll keep going, but if I'm not, I'm gonna DNF it. It is one of those books, as I was reading it last night, that if I had the audiobook for it, which I do not have access to the audiobook through Scribd or Libby, I would finish it through the audiobook. I would just blast through it just to be done it, you know, just to have read it and be done it. But because I don't, I'm thinking more about the physical reading of it. That brings into question the consumption of audiobooks for myself anyways. The idea of, like, do I listen to audiobooks purely just so I can be done a book? The answer to that is yes. Most of the time, yes. I listen to audiobooks so I can be done books really fast. Because I, as a person, as a mood reader as well, do not have patience or mood to be in a book for a really long time, unless I'm really, really liking the book. I am the kind of person who wants to finish a 500-page fantasy book in one sitting, because I don't have the patience to not be done it in one sitting and have to pick it up again, which is probably a comment on my own mental state more than anything else. Yeah, when I was thinking about, when I was reading the Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove last night, I kept thinking to myself, like, if I had the audiobook, I could be halfway through by now. If I had the audiobook, I would be done this in one sitting. I could be done it in a couple hours, because it's a small, skinny YA book. So those usually I can finish off in 2 hours with the audiobook, because I'm ridiculous and I listen to books at 3 times speed or higher if it's at all possible in the apps that I listen to audiobooks in, which usually it's not, because Libby and Scribd only go up to 3 times speed. I say only go up to 3 times speed. That's ridiculous. I listen to audiobooks so fast, and it brings into question whether I can even consume books and remember things, but we all know my memory's bad. Is that a comment on the way that I'm reading books? I don't think so, because I am getting the full story, and I do read audiobooks at the same time as actually reading it with my eyes, so that's how I understand them, because I have issues focusing on books. This is completely off the track of our original discussion of whether we should be DNFing 3-star books, but it's just me rambling at this point. But yes, my friends, let me know your opinions down below. I'd be very intrigued to hear what you think. This is definitely a interesting dilemma for myself to be in. is whether or not I actually want to finish a book that I know is just going to be middle of the road for me. Do I put the time in to finish that book and be like, yeah, it was fine? Or do I put it down and read something that I might like more? Anyways, my friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me as I reorganize my shelves. I gotta go find homes for all of these romance books that are in front of me now. I look forward to hearing all of your opinions. But anyways, also let me know how you think my shelves look now that I've reorganized them a little bit. What a weird video. All right. I'll catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.